My name is Emily. I'm 40 years old. I've heard my name means to grow up cheerfully. However, when I was 15, I found out that my father's ex-girlfriend was named Emily. Ever since, I've quietly doubted the true origin of my name. Honestly, as a kid, there are certain delicate past details about my parents I'd rather not know. They didn't really dote on me when I was young. My brother, 3 years older, is named Ryan. He's smart and charming. Both parents always wanted a boy. Ryan, as their first child, was loved immensely. Our grandparents believed the first child must be a boy, an old-fashioned thought. My mother gave birth to a boy despite immense pressure. With this background, my parents love Ryan more than anyone else. What about me? I always got hand-me-down clothes from Ryan. Even New Year's money had a clear disparity. Relatives always invited Ryan instead of being told to be patient because you're elder. I was told to support the boys, a puzzling way to instill ladylike behavior. I believe I was raised with a lot of discrimination. It felt like I was always many steps behind. My redeeming feature has always been my carefree nature. My parents said, "You never think about anything." If I thought too much, I might have become dark and resentful towards Ryan. Ryan is Ryan and I am me. Our family is a bit strange, but that's okay. I decided to accept our family and didn't care about my parents' attitude. No matter the difference in treatment, I am thankful to my parents for raising me. Ren, as we were kids, is still my sibling. Deep down, I couldn't truly hate them. However, that sentiment wavered after a particular incident when I was in my late 20s. My father retired. Both he and my mother, a homemaker, lived on their pension. Shortly after, my mother had a fall leading to paralysis in her legs. She had to be cared for. With my father retired, I thought he'd be around to help. But I was mistaken. "Hey, Emily, I can't do anything on my own, so come back home." The first thing my father said after a long time was outrageous. "What? That's impossible. If I return, I can't commute to my job." Instead of saying, "You can do anything, at least try to learn or practice," he said, "How dare you talk to your father like that? Just quit your job and come home. Don't you care about your mother?" It's not as simple as quitting and returning. My father has always been domineering. He had my mother take care of everything for years. Now that my mother has fallen ill, he's become a helpless man. It seems he's plotting to make me return and take my mother's place. My brother works closer to home. Ask him instead. Why does he only try to use me now, even though he never cared much for me before? I finally moved out and have been living freely. I never thought I'd give in to him, but for some reason, he started calling my workplace. Because of this, I couldn't concentrate on my job, and my colleagues and boss started to look at me oddly. Due to constant calls, I worked so hard to get this job, which I really wanted. I wanted to continue working there forever. But because of my father's relentless calls, I became stressed, affecting my work. I had no choice but to quit reluctantly. I decided to return home, only to find it in a terrible state. My father, now without a job, seemed to have nothing to do. He became obsessed with horse racing and would spend all his pension on it. The day he was paid, he was drinking more than before, and every morning I'd find empty beer cans and wine glasses all over the table. I had heard that there were some savings set aside for retirement, but the household finances were in shambles. No wonder when I suggested hiring a professional caregiver, my father hesitated. The utility bills were overdue and were paid only when the pension came in. It's a paycheck-to-paycheck situation. At this rate, even when the pension comes in, it'll be gone in no time. I had to use my savings to stabilize our lives initially, and then renovate the house to make it wheelchair accessible for my mother. Later, I found a job near home, left my mother in a daytime care service, and dedicated about $2,000 a month to care and living expenses. My savings, which I started accumulating since my first job, seemed to be running out despite working. Expenses kept mounting. Meanwhile, my father neither worked nor took responsibility, constantly depending on me financially and in my daily life. In a harsh sense, I felt completely leeched on. Between household chores in the morning, work in the daytime, and caregiving at night, I felt I was reaching my limit. Ideally, I wanted to place my mother in a nursing facility and leave my dad to fend for himself. This would mean all the money currently being spent on my father could be saved or used for my own expenses. However, my father vehemently opposed sending my mother to a facility, and she herself seemed to rely only on me, saying, "Why should I go to a facility when you're taking care of me?" I consulted my brother, but as expected, he was indifferent. It was clear that I was the one who had to make sacrifices, and so I found myself trapped in what felt like a prison called home. 3 years after starting this hellish cohabitation, my brother suddenly contacted me saying my girlfriend is pregnant, so we got married. He then visited with his wife, whom I'd never even met before. "Wow, I was looking forward to meeting Ryan's sister because of the way you talked about her. But she doesn't look anything like you. She's not cute at all." Paisley starts laughing. Needless to say, I felt a strong aversion to her sheer rudeness. Despite it being her first visit, she walks around our home as if she owns the place. She even enters my room without permission, uses my makeup, and then says, "I like this, I'll take it." She even rummages through the cabinet where my mother's jewelry is kept and asks, "How much can you sell 18-karat gold for nowadays?" She seems a little dangerous. She is definitely not a good woman, even though they're married. I think it would be better if they split up. But both my father and mother are only concerned about wanting a grandchild, to the point where they seem clueless, and I can't help but envy them a little. The thought of being related to this woman scared me a bit. My bad premonition came true on that very day, but I'm so nervous about raising a child for the first time. Paisley says it sweetly, twirling her hair. "Then you should live here," said my dad, who had been staring at Paisley's chest the whole time, suggesting this with a lecherous look. "Really? Are you sure?" Of course, as my parents, brother, and wife are getting excited about living together, I couldn't help but ask, "What will we do about the lack of rooms?" "You can move out." What my father's words astounded me. "That's a good idea. You should hurry up and leave." "Can you move out soon?" It might sound self-praising, but I believe I've been very dutiful to my parents, yet they're so quick to turn their backs on me. "Hold on, I can't just be thrown out like this. I've been paying for Mom's caregiving, and I don't even have the money to move." "What about Mom's care?" "I'll give you the money for caregiving or whatever. Thanks to working at a major company, not some small local business like you, I'm not struggling for money." "All right, Emily, go to your room and pack up your things. Move out by today." He patted me on the back as if to usher me toward my room. He looked pleased, as if he had found a quality new host to leech off. "Move out by today," he says, "but it's snowing outside. I don't have any money. Where am I supposed to live from now on?" Why, this doesn't make sense, does it? Without thinking, I voiced my true feelings. "This isn't a joke. You're so naive, Emily. Listen, I won't say it twice. We're moving in because I'm having a child. The Ivan should leave, taking him back." I instinctively looked at my parents, even at my mother whom I had desperately cared for all these years. "I wanted to be with my grandson. Just accept it," she said, smiling as if guiding me to acceptance. Saying so, he hastily packed up my room's belongings into a bag. "At least wait a few days until I find a place to live," but they forcibly dragged me by the arm and threw me out of the house. No matter how many times I rang the doorbell, they ignored me. Tossed around by my parents and finally by my brother, my life isn't their toy. Even when I was treated coldly as a child, I always smiled. It was my self-defense. But both my parents and brother misunderstood, thinking I could handle anything. "This isn't a joke. Don't mess with me," crying, I left my family home and wandered the streets aimlessly. Finally, I found a cat hat and sought refuge in an internet cafe. When I contacted a friend living in town, she miraculously offered to let me stay for a while. True friends are indeed priceless. With her support, I managed to save enough to live alone again. I haven't saved enough to leave town, but I don't want any more ties with my family. I decided to leave the state once I save more. But one day, my father and brother came to see me. They had apparently found my address in some official records. "May I help you?" I intentionally used formal language as if they were strangers. In response, both of them kneeled down in front of me. I'm sorry, he pleaded in a tearful voice. Please help us. We need to kick Ryan's wife out of the house. When I asked for an explanation, they said the situation at home had deteriorated significantly. I don't want to live with you, stingy lot. Laughing Packley had apparently kicked my brother and parents out of our family home. Packley had completely brainwashed my father, and as a result, he made the mistake of changing the house's title to include her name. So it wasn't taken, but rather given to her. I had heard that Paisley had fallen hard for my brother and pursued him fervently. But even back then, I felt something was off. My brother, who had become hairy in adulthood and practiced judo, was chubby and far from handsome. Why would Paisley, a slender and attractive woman who could have her pick of men, fall for him? I always wondered. It turned out she was after his money, and she had other men in her life. While the child's father was supposedly my brother, she continued to have affairs even after their marriage. When my brother found out and confronted Paisley, the next day, everyone was evicted. Paisley probably sensed that her other relationship would be discovered and cunningly persuaded my father to change the house title. They're naive, all their plans backfired, and they couldn't even live with the eagerly anticipated grandchild. Moreover, Paisley maxed out my mother's credit card. By the time they realized it, she had already bought electronics and precious metals. I always had a bad feeling about her, so I wasn't very surprised. It was more like I knew it. As far as I'm concerned, I have neither parents nor a brother. Who are you again? At that moment, the faces of my father and brother went pale. Are you going to abandon us too? Your mother can't even get in a wheelchair now. She's bitten. Don't you feel sorry for her after she was kicked out? He shouted, It was you who wanted to be with your grandchild and kicked me out. Mom told me to give up, so I gave up on being part of your family. Isn't it your fault, Dad, for changing the house title? My father was silently grinding his teeth. Wait, Emily, we are family. Let's help each other. My brother extended his hand, but I brushed it off. You ignored my calls when I repeatedly asked for help during Mom's care, and now you're saying this. My brother hesitated, looking guilty. My father shouted in his place. Forget about Ryan. Don't you have any gratitude for your parents? Have you forgotten all we did for you, you ungrateful child? Hearing this, I lost my temper, glaring at them with fury. I had appreciated what you did for me, which is why I quit the job I loved and returned home. I even spent money and renovated the house to make it comfortable. I put up with so much, yet because of your selfishness, I was kicked out. Do you really expect me to just say thank you? We apologized for that, didn't we? Oh, so apologizing makes everything okay? Well then, I'm sorry too for leaving you guys behind. I apologize, but I won't help. Since I apologized, you have to forgive me, right? How can you be so cheeky, even as a daughter? As my father lunged at me, I quickly defended myself using the self-defense techniques I learned at school. Ouch! He cried out in pain and curled up on the spot. My brother just stared at me, stunned, not even caring about father. I took the purifying salt that was by the entrance and threw it forcefully at both of them. I wished it would get into their eyes as they screamed and covered their faces. Stop showing me those greedy faces and get out. Saying this, I scattered the salt and kicked them out. People passing by noticed the commotion and stared. Normally, I would have felt embarrassed, but I was too angry to care. Wait, please, we can surely understand each other if we talk it out. We're blood related. Sorry, but I think you guys, my blood relatives, are the ones I can't understand the most. There's not a single decent person among you. The only sane one is me. Please never come near me again. Before they could open their eyes, I managed to distance myself from them. I kept throwing salt and yelling without any hesitation. Listen, I'll say this one last time. Never, ever approach me again. I consider all of my family dead. So if something happens to you, I won't visit you in the hospital or attend your funerals. I gave them one last fierce glare and slammed the front door shut, yet they still lingered at the front door. I want to talk, he said, sitting down. I'll call the police. And just like that, both he and my brother were gone. After that, I received several letters from my father. It seems that my parents took refuge at my mother's younger sister's place. The letters were pitiful, begging for help. But from my perspective, I felt sorry for the aunt who suddenly had to accommodate the elderly couple. In the third letter, it was mentioned that my father was pushing the caregiving responsibilities onto my aunt. This led to a fight with her husband, resulting in them being kicked out. Now they are renting a cheap apartment and are back to fighting with my brother's wife. They aim to reclaim the family home, but they probably can't afford to hire a lawyer. Considering they changed the property title themselves, they probably don't stand the chance. My brother, still separated but not divorced from his wife, had an affair. He became the cheating husband. The woman he was involved with is a friend of his wife's. It seems like a trap, but there's no evidence. Consequently, the divorce discussions are at a standstill. My brother claims his wife's affair ruined the family and is demanding compensation. His wife argues that there's no evidence she cheated while raising their child, but my husband did. She seems to be asking for hefty compensation, property division, and child support. Since neither of their affairs can be proven, the divorce discussions are going nowhere. As for me, I met a man at one of my jobs and we got married. It was a workplace romance, so we were wary of being seen dating in public. Instead, we rented apartments near each other. We spent most of our days at one or the other's place, essentially living together. Then one day, all of this actress is getting married. Should we? That casual proposal, as if we were just heading to a convenience store, remains a fond memory. We're both down to earth, not into grand gestures. I'm glad he didn't attempt a big surprise, given that I'm not the type to react much. It might have felt awkward for him, but life is full of surprises. 2 years after getting married, I found out I was pregnant with triplets. Having had no experience with kids, even those lacking siblings, it was overwhelming. Taking care of one would be hard enough, let alone 3. But with ample support from my husband and his family, we've been managing. 1 boy and 2 girls. When I found out, I was determined to love them all equally. However, when I looked at them, such determination was unnecessary. They're all adorable, and it's impossible not to give them my all. The only challenge is when they all want to hold my hand at the same time. I've turned it into a game. We'll switch after 100 steps. However, kids are fickle. Suddenly, they'd say, "I want to hold hands with Daddy today." To the children, it seems both their mom and dad love them equally, which is a joy. I hope to continue building a family where everyone, true to my name, shines brightly in happiness.